Everybody, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, yes, we can.
Good, thanks, Vera. Wonderful. So yeah, we're a little bit behind schedule, but let's maybe. So we're gonna have 4 talks in this panel. I'll start with a short talk myself. Then there will be Hiroki Sayama, then Oliver Brock, and then Stephanie Gill. So each of these talks will be about 10 minutes. So I'll try to keep the time, and then this should be followed by a panel. So I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. Right, and so yeah, I'll start right away with my talk. So I guess yeah. So in the past I was more talking about embodied cognition in robots. How do different artificial agents, let's say, learn something like a body schema, and over time, I'm more and more into the development of human cognition. So how infants learn something like the first body models and sensory motor coordination. And the robots, in this case, humanoid robots, have become the tools for my embodied computational models. So that's what me and my group are focusing on. So that's what I'm going to try to introduce in those 10 minutes, and specifically stressing what are the embodied aspects in that. So this is a project that we're working on that actually started in January. And on one hand, you've got these babies, in this case, in 3 contexts. So we observe them, what they do spontaneously. Then we have 2 tasks for them. One is like we put this little thing, we call it a buzzer. It's like a vibrotactile stimulus, and we observe how they reach for it. And then just standard reaching, visually presented objects like toys. And so we study them in these 3 contexts. Then we use robots to make models, computational models, in this case, robot embodied computational models to understand the mechanisms. We do some theorizing, and we also have some tools that I'm not going to talk about, how we facilitate, if you imagine you have hundreds and hundreds of hours of video recordings of babies, how you can extract the movements and stuff like that. So this is, our study material. On the top is babies around this reach onset, when the girl on the left is not able to reach for the toy, while the girl on the right, they are both 3 months old. Once she actually accidentally maybe touches the object, she can then reach for it. And at the bottom is this other task where we present this tactile stimulus, and then we observe how they reach for it. And this is a 6-month-old, and this is a 9-month-old. So a 6-month-old seems to have a hard time actually finding the stimulus on the hand. And we would like to understand what is going on. So what do these 3 contexts and scenarios have in common? And that's what we want to use the baby humanoid robots for. Okay, so how does it work when we use the robots? So this is a slightly older work of mine, where on the iCap, so we use the iCap, that's our favorite robot. It has this whole body skin. And so I was going around the iCap for about 1 hour stimulating it. And since it has this whole body skin, we wanted to have it also like this somatosensory homunculus. So like one piece of artificial neurons that represents the skin of the robot. And we used the self-organizing map algorithm, and after some tweaking, we managed to basically get the homunculus for the robot that is kind of the same gross contours like in a monkey or in the human brain. Okay, but now the question, the kind of the radical question is, what do the maps explain, right? So the fact that, and this is from Kevin O'Regan. This is a chapter also in his book, Why Red Doesn't Sound Like a Bell. So the fact that it lights up on the homunculus doesn't actually mean that you know where it is, right? It doesn't allow you to act upon it. It's just, lights up in the brain. So the fact that you have a map in the brain doesn't really mean much. And that's kind of the essence of the embodied approach to understand the infant development here. Right, so this is another paper with a provocative title: What, if anything, are topological maps that are known to be in the brain for? And so on one hand, you would have these body maps, or people talking about body knowledge. And on the other, you would have something like this. So this is a 4-month-old. I'm going to fast forward it a little bit. And so that thing is buzzing. And now look at her, how she's finding that, right? So this is a really closed loop process. It's not like I localize and then I go there. So we talk about body know-how, which you can define as a collection of skills of an organism to control its body effectively in its interaction with the environment. And so we need these closed loop behaviors. And so this is what we do on the iCap, that, we tickle it, and then you see, it looks there and it goes there. So quite like what the baby does. So we've got quite a good match in terms of the behavior and also in terms of the sensory motor space, because the iCap has vision, the iCap has touch, the iCap has proprioception, and the iCap has the motor modality. So this is what I call embodied computational model of child and brain development. And importantly, we have these complete sensory motor loops. And the fact that we can solve this in a robot can serve as a normative model, right? It doesn't mean that this is what the baby brain is using, but we have several ways how to solve it, how engineers would solve it, and that provides normative models with which we can then compare with what the brain is doing. Okay, sorry, should be here. Right. So yeah, defined also by Daniela Caligiore and others, they call computational embodied neuroscience. It's something that you want to reproduce these behaviors also alongside with the learning processes. You should be constrained by neuroscientific evidence, and you should be controlling an embodied agent. So that's the methodology that we are using. Okay, and so how does this help the theorizing? So in a kind of good old-fashioned AI approach, you would have something like a serial pipeline, sense, think, act. So there is the stimulus, you should localize it on the skin, then in space. This is called tactile remapping in the literature. And then you can reach for the target in space. So let's say you send your other arm there. And this is, some models, for example, from Matt Longo and colleagues that basically follow this kind of pipeline. And once you do the localization, then you would kind of send that as a target to, to the movement preparation and motor control. And so then that would follow this kind of sequence. However, that's not what is happening in the babies, right? Because you see that after I present the stimulus, this is really simultaneous. And actually, we also studied that quantitatively in many infants. So the more, the older they get, the more they use this kind of like simultaneous thing. So sometimes it's partially sequential, but it's definitely not like, that it thinks, localizes, and then executes, right? It's a more kind of intertwined process. And the question is this easier or harder? And so, yeah, that's what we want to find out, and that's why we have this robot close to behaviors, which can be, in the iCap, or we also put together like a more simple simulation where we've got like a 2-arm platform, and then we represent the somatosensory space with some kind of what we call sensory motor magma. We just kind of have population code of the touches and of the proprioception in like 200 dimensions. And then a variational autoencoder is trying to make, squeeze that into a latent space that is low dimensional, which would force it to have something like a body in space in a very kind of implicit fashion. And then when you stimulate, it actually generates these reaching trajectories. And yeah, so from the tools, we have a lot of raw material in those hours and hours of video recordings of infants, and we can either manually code it, which is very laborious, or nowadays there's neural networks that can extract in 2D or even in 3D the movements of the babies. And I'm just going to show you one tool which is this. So it's motion retargeting. So on the left, you've got always this baby moving, and the movements are mapped onto a robot simulator. And this is like based on the fetus simulator from the University of Tokyo. This is the ICAP. This is a MIMO simulator from Frankfurt. And so what you can do in addition is that you can open the eyes in the simulator, and it also has touch. So basically, you're getting like a first-person sensory motor infant simulator, and that actually creates much more ecologically plausible data to feed into machine learning models than, for example, when people in developmental robotics, they often do motor babbling, like random movements in joint space. So in this case, we actually reproduce how the infants really moved, and that's what we then use to feed the models. Okay. One slide on the conference we're organizing in Prague in September. It's called the ICDL, International Conference on Development and Learning. We've got a great list of speakers. It's topics, computer science, robotics, psychology, neuroscience, and embodiment is definitely present. We just extended the regular papers deadline, so it's midnight Pacific time tonight. So especially for you, you still have like some hours to go if you like. And if you don't manage, then there's going to be late-breaking results like mid-June. If you can submit a one-page abstract and still come with a poster. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, for example. And yeah, with that, I'm gonna close my talk. And yeah, I will ask then Hiroki Sayama to get ready. I will just have a quick look in the chat. If you have if you have questions for me, then maybe I can take one or two.